Well done, Nadine. Really smashed the old order all the self-help books in the world but never actually read them technique. Genius. Probably would have helped with next week's presentation. Learning courses on LinkedIn. Might be useful. Okay, Mrs. Presenter. Tell me your secrets.
It's super important to do your audience research.
Welcome to the first session of How to Reboot Your Career in Midlife in association with LinkedIn. My name is Victoria Lambert, and I'm the Careers and Education Editor of the Telegraph. This session is Redundancy in a Pandemic, How to Reset. And over the next 45 minutes, I will be talking to a selection of experts who will be giving you some practical tips and advice to help you leave tonight's session feeling more in control. Tonight's session will be split into two halves. Firstly, we will be tackling the nitty-gritty of the redundancy process, looking at how you can maximise your package and what your rights are as an employee. In the second half, we will be dealing with the emotional effects of redundancy and how you can go about the next steps in your career. The first part, to kick off our discussion tonight, I'm going to welcome Dawn Morton-Young. Dawn is a career enhancement coach, diversity advisor, columnist, and HR consultant. She is the founder and director of the UK's first HR consultancy for employees, Employee Angels, as well as running a traditional HR consultancy for businesses alongside that. Hi, Dawn.
Hi, so good to be here.
We're going to start, I think, we're going to start off with some questions that really, quite specific questions for you that people have been asking about. And the very first one is really, what should a redundancy package cover?
Okay.
So is it just about me being given money?
Okay. So your redundancy package will cover what will, as a basic, statutory redundancy. You will have any holiday that's owed to you. And for a lot of us who have been in this pandemic over the year, we wouldn't have used a lot of our holiday. So, you know, hopefully there should be a lump sum of that. You'll notice if you're not working, you'll notice. And also there can be some benefits in there as well. So you can get, if you have a car allowance or if you get commissions as well, if you're a salesperson, then they can prorata your commission. So as I said, at the very basic, what employers have to give you is statutory redundancy. Now, statutory redundancy is after the age of 22, it's a week for every year of service up to a maximum of 20 years. And you then, after you're 41, you get a week and a half. But that amount is capped at £544. It's just gone up at the beginning of April, £544 a week. So, for example, if you earn £636 a week, you will only get £544. If you earn £336 a week, you will get £336 per week. And that's how it works. Yeah, and it can be claimed for up to 20 years service. Some companies will have what's called an enhanced redundancy, which is a different contractual redundancy, which is over and above what statutory redundancy is. So, and they can also, if they want people to volunteer for redundancy, they can also offer you a voluntary redundancy rate. So that may be over and above what would be statutory as an incentive for you to take the voluntary redundancy. So employers are not under any obligation to give more than the statutory minimum. They may also, as your package, include things such as I've known clients of mine to do particular training courses or to award some money towards retraining as part of that as well. But I would just say that obviously in the climate that we're in, there's not many employers that are willing to kind of put their hands in their pockets in that way. And I think that they've provided a link to both the government's calculator for statutory redundancy as well. So that should be in the comments.
That's great. I think what people are also really interested in is how the whole process works. And how long does it take? I mean, if I'm going to be made redundant, will I be asked to leave and clear my desks immediately, or do I have to spend a month or 2 months? What are the structures?
So that clearing your desk immediately does sometimes happen in other countries, but thankfully we don't have that here. And I guess if if it was all of a sudden, what has to happen is there needs to be a consultation period. Now, that is very much determined on the numbers of people that are being made redundant at your workplace. So if you have over 20 people that are going to be made redundant within a 90-day or within a 3-month period, so it doesn't matter whether this department makes 5 people redundant, another makes 10, another makes, as long as there's 20 people that a company expects will leave the business within 30 days, then there needs to be what is called collective consultation. So collective consultation is when those that are affected by the redundancy proposals would nominate their peer group, other affected people, to represent them. And those individuals will meet with the business for 30 days, and they will then go over all of the terms of redundancy. So within the process, the employer has certain things they need to let you know. They need to let you know the business case for why the redundancies are needed. They need to let you know how many people they're expecting to go in what job areas. They need to let you know how they're planning to select people. So say, for example, you have a team of technicians and you're going, they want to reduce it by 4 people and there's 10 of you. There needs to be a fair selection process for how they're going to decide who stays and who goes, unless they also offer voluntary redundancy, which we spoke about a bit earlier. And then there would be a minimum of 30 days consultation if you're doing collective redundancies. If there are less than 20, then there isn't necessarily a time limit, although a lot of companies practice 30 days anyway, but you need to have at least one individual meeting. And even if you've had collective consultation, you'd have to have one meeting. The other thing to note is that if you come from a unionized organization, then your union will normally be those employee representatives, but they can act alongside the staff representatives. You know, that's also something that you would need to. And in terms of when you would leave the organization, as I said, you have to have at least one individual meeting. And in that meeting, they could, if they've explored all of the alternatives to redundancy, if they've given you a chance to be redeployed, as long as they've taken your views and, you know, looked into your views. So if you put forward a counter proposal, then, sorry, I'm seeing a question in the chat, so let me know if I can answer that. Yeah, so if you have views about the proposal, they need to give reasonable consideration to those. But if everything's been exhausted and there is no role for you, they can say that yes, you're redundant on the day of your meeting. However, you have to be paid your notice. So they would either have to give your notice to you in a lump sum, which is called pile-on, which I know I can talk a bit more about later. I'm just going to have to look in. Would you be able to ask for compensation for lost benefits? Okay.
So yes, so Barbara in the comments box, for anyone who can't see that, Barbara's asked, would you be able to ask for compensation for lost benefits? For example, after 25 years, my company offers 6 months off on full pay. I have 20 years service and I've been planning my long leave. Would I be entitled to 80% of that benefit? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So in a word, no, not necessarily entitled. However, what I would do is in your consultation period, you can have that conversation with them. So the difference is when I spoke about things like car allowance, these are things that you would get paid in your salary every month. So it's kind of a part of your income. It's kind of the same as where we would look at commission and things like that. It's a guaranteed part of your income. Whereas this is something that the company offer after a certain amount of years of service. However, if you are right in, so you said it's 20 and it's for 25 years. So I think if you was right on the cusp of it, then yes, you could probably ask that. But I think with 5 years to go, I would doubt that would be something that they would allow you to do. But it's worth a question. Everything's worth a question.
Well, I mean, and Sheila Armstrong has also asked in the comment box here, so can redundancy be appealed if the job title is not disappearing?
Yes. So what I would say is when you've got the business case as to why your role is disappearing, if they're having a job title that is the same, then what you need to do is to ask them for a copy of the job description for that new or remaining role. And so it's not really about the job title, it's about what's encompassed within the role. And if your role and the role that they're moving to has about 70% synergy, then I would say that there's a reason for you to be able to appeal whether your role is actually going.
That's quite interesting. I think some of us feel that redundancy just happens now. You know, you don't have any kind of say in it. But it sounds like that there's more to discuss than just, you know, just taking your
yeah,
money.
there is. You need to make sure that the business case is robust and sound. And if you think that, and even things like the selection process, how are they scoring you? Are they going to do it by interview to select people? All of those things you need to kind of look at, because there could be things that they're doing that maybe aren't quite right. So, you know, those are the things you need to pay attention to.
Yeah. Andy Page in the comments box has just asked, what about if the role is proposed to be moved to another country?
Yeah. So normally when employers move roles to another country, it's a cost saving exercise. So they will move the work to a lower cost center. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, so I'll give you a quick example. I worked for a company where they were moving their operations to Manila for a certain department. And what happened was it turned into a 2P situation because the Manila entity was a separate entity. And so we had to offer people the chance to go over to Manila and take their jobs. But obviously they'd be doing that on the salary that Manila would attract, etc. So I think if the role is proposed to be moved to another country, again, it's about looking into the business case and the reasons for that. If it's about cost, then I guess you could put in a counter proposal if you can think of another way to save costs or other alternatives to that. But yes, you know, that is a valid reason on the surface of it to move the role or to make a role redundant.
Okay. And I've just seen that Bree Dunn has also said, we talked about a 70% match role. Is there a period of time within which the 70% match role becomes available?
Yeah, so again, if a role has been made redundant, the employer should not reinstate the role. And it's this whole thing about reasonable amount of time. So I would say anything between kind of 3 and 6 months, there is a question to be raised if that role comes back online. And if you see that role coming back online, I would contact the HR department and say, oh, I've just seen my role come back online. Does that mean that I'm, you know, I would ask that question.
Yeah, yeah. And Tracy Ostrich says, what if the role is distributed amongst other staff?
Yeah, so that again is another a bit of a tricky one. So employers again may do this. So what they might do is they might take a piece of the role and give it to X, Y, and Z person. Again, it's around this kind of 70%, 60% area, where if one person is doing 60% of the role and then they've divvied up the rest, the other 40% amongst others, then there may be an argument to be made that there's at least a part-time version of your role still available in the organization. So it just depends on how that role is distributed across.
Okay. One of our preset questions was from a reader who said, I'm a client manager for an SME. Can I negotiate a bigger payoff than the one I'm being offered?
Okay, so I said earlier, it's always worth asking the question. I think it depends on the organization that you are with. So you said you're a client manager. I don't know whether your contract has sort of, you know, that you can't take clients over with you or any kinds of things like that. If it doesn't, then that may be a bargaining area for you, is that, you know, I think that I'm worth this to the company. I've brought in this amount of business. You put your own business case forward. I brought in this amount of business. I haven't signed a non-disclosure. You know, I haven't looked at the what's the word I'm looking for? Restrictive covenants. That's it. I haven't got any restrictive covenants in my, you know, and so I would like to negotiate this in exchange for the fact that I'm not going to try and poach your clients, or I'm not going to. And if you have got those restrictive covenants in, again, it's worth asking the question. Put forward your business case. Let them know how effective and valuable you've been to them, and see whether they will pay you over that. But there's no right to that, an additional pay.
Okay. Can you ask for extended time to find a new job? Can you ask to stay on a bit longer?
Yeah, you can ask that question. And again, it's going to be, you'll get an idea when you get the briefing pack from your employer. You will have an idea and when they think that role is going to roll off. And so you you could then say to them, you know, could I have some additional time, or do you think that the role can carry on till X? But remember that they can't create a role for you that doesn't exist. So if there isn't any more work, there isn't much that they can do. The other thing that you can also do is to perhaps opt to be put on a period of gardening leave, or what's called garden leave. And what that means is that you're still working for the employer, but you don't have to do any work, and that therefore gives you the space to do your CV, go and see agencies, go to interviews, do some retraining courses, all of those kind of things. The other thing that can buy you a bit more time is if you've got a long notice period, so say you've got a 2, 3 month, 4 month notice period, is to ask if they're not offering you already for pylon. So you can either have full or part pylon, and that's payment in lieu of notice. So you, for example, if you've got a 3 month notice period, you can say, can I have 1.5 months pylon? So you pay that to me in a lump sum, and I'll serve 1.5 months, because then that gives you the extra 1.5 months to be able to again look for other roles and retrain, etc. So there are a couple of things that you can ask for that some employers are quite open to doing.
Richard Beckworth in the comments has said, my employer is being acquired. My role will be duplicated in the purchasing company. Do they have to consult with me, or can they just make me redundant?
They do have to consult with you if your role is going to be duplicated. If your company's being acquired, then that's what we call a TUPE situation, which is kind of a consultancy on steroids. And so there are certain rights that you have under TUPE, and one of those is for your role to transfer. However, if there's going to then be a duplicate role in the new entity, then it's likely that they will start redundancy consultation with you prior to you moving across and being TUPE'd over. So yes, they do have to consult with you.
And does a company, Fran Cole says, does a company have to send you a briefing pack upon redundancy? A notice email isn't sufficient. They actually have to send you the pack.
So what they need to do is to let you know that they're proposing a redundancy, and then there's 4 elements that they have to tell you, which is about the method of selection, etc., etc. It may be that they send you something beforehand to just say this is what the company is thinking of. They may call you to a town hall, they may do something like that. So it's not necessarily a requirement for a pack, but it's a requirement for that certain steps of information that you should get as part of being told of the proposal.
Okay. Poor Steve Pugh here says that in the comments, he says nothing has changed in the last 20 years. Is that true, Dawn? I mean, you know,
I think,
are they improving the process, do you think? Do you think we're getting better at it?
I think that the process is getting better. I think the situation we're in at the moment is very complicated, and it's complicated for employers. And I'm not, you know, here to speak on behalf of employers. I'm just saying that it's complicated because a lot of employers are finding themselves in a situation where, because of the downturn in work over the past year, that they're not able to afford the resources that they normally would to make this more of a palatable situation for people. We're doing a lot of this work, and I've been doing a lot of this work over systems like this, over Teams. You're not able to sit with people, you're not able to do that, and so it is quite difficult at the moment, is what I would say in their defense. But no, not much has changed.
AJ says, usually, for how long are TUPE terms valid for?
Right, so an employer can start to consult with you immediately on, you know, changing your terms and conditions. But the likelihood, but there is protection for at least a year. So I would say that, you know, they can start to consult with you, but most employers will leave it alone for at least a year, sometimes more, because it's a big job to try and consult with people out of their terms and conditions, and it normally involves some sort of payout of some kind.
Dawn, you are an absolute mine of information, but I'm going to have to cut you off here because I think we're going to go over to our next couple of guests. And so thank you so much for joining me, and I'm sure everybody's really enjoyed your input.
Thank you.
And I'm now going to welcome the next 2 guests of the evening. Firstly, we have Emily Maynard, who is head of LinkedIn Learning. Emily has over 10 years of experience as a sales leader, coach and mentor, and she works with businesses across the country to help them develop their employees through the power of learning, and also works within LinkedIn's social impact team, who have coached hundreds of furloughed workers throughout their transition periods. Also joining me is multi-award winning career and life coach, Carolyn Parry. Carolyn spent 15 years as a careers and employability director at Aberystwyth University before setting up Career Alchemy. It's a career coaching and training business. She is also UK President-elect of the Careers Development Institute, the professional body for the sector. So hello, Emily, and hello, Carolyn.
Hello.
So we've got some slightly different questions now that we're moving on to. And the first one, I think, is a much more sort of personal question. Why do I feel really angry at my employer? I know there is talk of redundancies in the office, but I haven't been told I'm affected. Carolyn, do you want to tackle that one first?
Yes, thank you. Redundancy can feel very personal. And the problem with redundancy is that it rattles us because it rattles our innate identity. We have a huge professional identity, okay? And as soon as something comes to risk that, that feels uncomfortable. We love belonging as individuals. We love security. And we hate fear and uncertainty. And what happens when redundancy looms is we're all going, gosh, is it me? Is it not? That destabilizes teams. It destabilizes us. And so that uncertainty, particularly if you've been with an organization for a long time, can trip you into a series of emotions. And the first one really is that sense, and this is Kubler-Ross's model, the sense of shock. No, they can't be serious. They're not going to put a redundancy program in place. Oh, well, it looks like it's me. No, it's not. It can't be me. Not happening. So the denial comes next. And then there's frustration, which is code to speak for anger. Well, what the heck do they think they're doing? The management don't know what they're doing. What have they made an absolute mess of this, and now I'm at fault. I'm going to lose my security of my job. Then we tip into depression if we're not careful. Then we start to go, oh, I'm going to have to do something, because if you sit in depression, there's got to be a way out of it. Then you're through into decision making. Then you can actually start to integrate into a new future. But it's the anger that gets us. And if you can actually understand and look at something like the Kubler-Ross cycle, you can name the emotion, which takes some of the sting out of it, because you understand why you're feeling that way. And if you're not used to feeling angry, it's quite disconcerting in itself as well. So I hope that gives a sense of why we feel like that. And it's because it upsets our whole world and all our stability and identity and belonging and all the rest of it.
Emily, is that something that you would want to chip in on?
We work, and while it's our profession, it is something we do every day, and we have to be tied to it personally. So I think it's a natural reaction. I think what I would advise is, how do you get past that as quick as possible? How do you acknowledge that you're angry, accept it, and move on? Because I think that's what you have control over.
So what practical things can I do to take care of my well-being while I go through redundancy? Carolyn, I'll come to you again.
Okay, so I think the first thing is, as Emily says quite right, recognize the emotion and find some space to process, because emotion is tiring. So that means a bit of rest, some sleep, eating well, not hitting the chocolate or the alcohol overly. Although obviously that's a challenge for everybody, what we've been through recently. Getting out and having some fresh air, taking some exercise, talking, recognizing and articulating what's going on. Tap into your company's employee assistance programs. If there's a listening call center you can call into and have a conversation around it, get informed and start to take some action, because once you start to take action, you accept the situation, you're back in control. The worst thing that can happen is staying in the anger and becoming a victim. So that rest, well-being, looking after yourself, self-care, hugely important, time and space to process, and actually put yourself first for a change. Stop worrying so much about what the company wants of you. Give yourself a bit of time and space to rebalance and start to regroup and move forward.
That's really nice advice, actually. Emily, what would you add to that?
Yeah, the only thing I would add, +1 to everything, I think the only thing I would add is just make sure you're talking to people. Everything is better when you start communicating. So sharing your thoughts and your concerns with family and friends, and even colleagues that you're working with that might be in the same exact situation. And it's interesting, over the last 18 months, we've seen an increase in our conversations on LinkedIn Learning, up as much as 40%. So people are coming to our platform and talking and having conversations, because it is proven to help you. If you get out of your head and get it into words, and it helps you move forward. So I think that would be the only thing I would add, is just make sure you're not keeping it all in and talking to people.
And actually, this is something, redundancy is actually surprisingly common, isn't it? I mean, we've all discussed earlier that we've all been through stages like this at times in our careers. So I think actually acknowledging that it's not unusual and that it doesn't mean you aren't going to go on and have a really enjoyable career doing lots of things that you love. It's definitely not a full stop, is it?
No, and I think I think what we've seen in the last 18 months is that it's actually become very acceptable. And I think there was a question that I've seen earlier was just talking about, should we display this on our profile, or should we show that we've been made redundant on our resume? And the thing is be open and honest, because it's common. And a lot of times, I think Carolyn said it earlier, this isn't something necessarily directly attributed to your work. It is a situation that's out of your control completely. And at LinkedIn, we're so aware now that this is kind of commonplace that we've created open to work. So you can actually put a frame on your profile picture to make you aware, and it attracts more of the employers that are hiring to have conversations with you. So I think the stigma of redundancy has been removed because of COVID.
That's very good. One of the questions that we've also been asked already, and I'll go straight to you with this, Emily. There will be redundancies at work. How can I make myself a better candidate to keep my job?
Yeah. So to keep your job, I think it's, this might be a better place for Carolyn, but I would always say, but what I can say is to keep your job, it's again, having conversations. What we talk about at work all the time is, and not around redundancies, but really understand why is this change happening and how am I directly a part of it? And so the more you understand what's happening, the better you are equipped to see where might you be able to fit in, and having conversations. So I know that Dawn gave some great ideas earlier. Just make sure you're speaking to the right people. You're speaking to HR. You're speaking to other lines of business that might not be impacted, and making sure they know who you are. But I would also say focus on what can you also be doing externally, and don't take don't put all your eggs in one basket. And that's where it'd be really important to focus on, has your CV been updated? And I'll tell you all, I've done that recently, and it is so empowering to update your CV because it's amazing how much you've done in the past couple of years. And so it really could give you make you sit up a little higher, because you're like, wow, look what I've actually done. So, focusing on the CV, which is still important, and then also focusing on creating your LinkedIn profile. So those would be my tips.
Karen, I've just seen we've had a question in here from Karen saying my self-belief is shattered. How do I regain my confidence?
And
that just speaks to so many of us, doesn't it?
And it's absolutely par for the course. So I don't want to burst your bubble about feeling you've lost your confidence, but actually lots of people do. And so the first thing I do is to say your state of mind, your confidence is, and how you feel is not fixed. So it changes throughout the day. So if you want to change how you feel, think about your favorite piece of music, play it full blast in your head, and you'll find that you shift instantly in the way that you come across and the way that you feel. That's not to give a glib answer, but it is also to say that you can change state, and also think about other places and other things you have in your life where you are confident, because confidence is very often contextual, as it is in this case. So and what we do is we delete, we distort, or we generalize our experience. So to get to something specific, think about a time when you did something really well and just relive that in your mind's eye like a movie. Go back and have a look at it if you've got something tangible, and that'll help you reconnect with those good sensations and those good feelings, and recognize this is not a permanent state. It is something you are passing through.
That's so it's transitional. And that's Barbara's, I think that feeds into Barbara's question here as well, because she's saying, any advice for how you face people at work when you've been told you've been made redundant? Because she says she's actually having to continue working until her notice period is up. And she's quite right. Nobody wants to have to go into that with that sort of hanging over their heads. It's depressing.
I think it is difficult. I mean, I was working with a big organisation recently, and we took 200 people through counselling and coaching to help them understand what they could do. And one of the questions that came up is that we have two teams at work, the lot that have got through and know they've got jobs, there's the rest of us that have to creep in through the door and feel almost ashamed of who we are because we're not part of the team. They don't know how to identify with us. And so I think actually it's about having some open conversations, saying, look, it's as awkward for you as it is for me. Can we just get on, please? Having let's go for a cup of tea. Let's just talk this through. I'm uncomfortable. I know you're uncomfortable because you know I'm not here long term, but can we just be decent human beings about it and actually find a way to work together, even if that's, we'll go and have a cup of tea at 5 o'clock or some cake, or do something that might be a little bit more fun, a little bit more keeping that human connection. And that's hard to do when you're having to not be able to do it physically either, if you're having to do it online, but you can still have that sense of connection. I think that's the most important thing. This is not a permanent state. It's very common in the workplace. We need to find a way to deal with it and just respect and be open and courteous to people. And if we can do that, we can all get on and feel better about life.
Yeah, and Sheila in the comment box has just said redundancy is as stressful as marriage or death or buying a home. She said she was made redundant at 60. Immediately asked to apply for a not dissimilar role. That's so annoying. The answer was no. Why should you want to go back? Good for you, Sheila. And then she then changed direction completely by the look of it. And she says it's been a blessing in the end.
Yeah, can I just pick up on that? And obviously, only I know will want to say something at this point. If you take the word crisis in China, write it in Chinese, it's got two characters. One is danger and the other is opportunity. And this is a massive opportunity. If you flip the switch from I'm really having a hard time to, okay, what could I do with this? You could find yourself, like Sheila did, really lighting her life up by changing direction and doing the thing she's always put off because she never could quite take the leap, perhaps, whoever it might be. So this is an opportunity. Yeah. This is a great chance to look at your life and understand what life you want, where you want it and how you want it. And if you go to the link that's been posted in there on my website, there's some activities you can do and some places to go and start to consider that. Because you've got one life, you've got the chance of one life, live the gift we've got in a way that works for you.
Emily, what would you say to that?
That story, so thank you for sharing, Sheila. I think the one thing is I want to give you confidence that it's not impossible. So last year on LinkedIn, we saw that 1/3 of the jobs filled in the UK were filled from career switchers. So there were people that moved into different roles. So it is happening more and more. And in my role, I'm speaking to HR leaders, and they're talking about, how do we be more open-minded in our recruitment process and look for skills. And a lot of the skills now are transferable skills. Organizations realize these more technical skills, these hard skills, are easier to train than a lot of these softer skills. And so the importance is coming on, creativity, communication, leadership. All of these skills are heavily coveted. And they're easy to transfer across industry and in different parts of the business. There is something, and I think we'll share, there's something that LinkedIn has, it's called a Career Explorer. And what this does is you can put in the title that you currently have, the role that you're currently working in, and what it'll do with our data that we have from 740 million members, we're able to start seeing what other jobs would be relevant based on the skills that you have for that job. And so it's going to start highlighting that other roles that you might want to consider and what skills are transferable, but also where gaps might be. So Sheila, you mentioned you then went on and studied. So by understanding where that gap might be, you could actually then say, okay, this is what I need to do. And it helps you just take one step forward. Not moving forward is not going to get you anywhere. If you freeze, you're going to stay in the same place. And just taking one step forward will position you to take the next and the next. So the Career Explorer is one of those tools that could help you just open your mind to what other transferable roles might be available.
There's some great questions coming in, guys, and I'm going to try and get to everybody, but please forgive me if we don't. Mike Alexander has said, any tips for getting started on LinkedIn? I'm concerned about privacy. So,
yes. So you have control of the settings that you want to, you have control of how much access you want to give or not give. So I think that's the first thing. You are in the driver's seat, and it's in the settings section of LinkedIn, and you can identify the privacy. I would want to instill that this is our #1 priority at LinkedIn is trust and safety. And year after year, we are winning awards for being the most trusted site. So while I understand privacy could be a concern of yours, do know that this is something we have a team dedicated. Because if we lose that, if we lose trust and safety with our members, our platform will not exist. So it is something that we take very, very seriously. As far as tips, there's so much that I can tell you. I think the big things are, make sure that you are thinking about your professional brand and how do you want to be perceived. Is it, and what type of roles are you looking for? And cater your profile to align with the job that you want, not necessarily the job that you have. Have a picture. It is, I can't remember the exact stat, but people with pictures get so many more connections and requests and companies looking at them than without a picture, and just being authentic. But I think the thing is getting into LinkedIn and start using it, start connecting. I think that's the biggest thing too, is as I talked earlier, how important it is to be having conversations with people right now. And people are so open if they know you or not. Everybody wants to help. Everybody knows somebody or is impacted themselves and wants to help during this time. So connect to people that you've worked with. Connect with people that are in the role that you would like to be in, and ask to have a conversation so you can learn more. I think that's the thing. Humans want to help each other right now. So
that's a nice thought, actually. That's a really nice thought. So that's another good point. Alwyn Martin has asked, if you put that on your CV, if you have a break because you're using it as a moment to retrain or pivot or just to have a sit back and think, I'm off the treadmill for a moment. What do I want to do next? Does the next employer going to mind that? Are they going to judge you for that break in your career?
I mean, my question is, do you want to work for somebody that does? I mean, that would be my question, because this is something where whenever you're interviewing for a job, you're putting your best case forward, but companies need to put their best case forward. Yeah. And if they pull you out because you've taken time off, then it might be an organization you don't want to work for. I have 4 years on my profile that I wasn't working in a traditional context. I was a mother, and I'm proudly wearing that badge. And we now actually have that role on LinkedIn. You stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home dad, stay-at-home partner. So I think it's really important to say that it is okay to be authentic and share that. And if you want to have, focus on what type of employer you want to work for.
That's a really nice way of looking at it. Carolyn, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think it depends on the employer. Some are more tolerant of gaps than others, but most employers will want to know what happened. And so putting the reason why, I think, is good practice. There might be a period for ill health, for instance. You just need to put, career break due to ill health, problem now resolved. So that doesn't mean, so the employer's not going to ask because they'll see that there was a problem. They understand what it was. They're not interested in that now because it's not an issue. And so an employer is always going to try and factor you in or factor out the risk. And it's that balancing act. Is this person really going to give me the return on investment I'm looking for? Or is this person going to cost me time, effort and money and business potentially if it's the wrong person? And that's the way a recruiter is going to be looking at anybody through that process. So what you're doing is you're showcasing as an applicant all the good stuff you have to offer with good solid examples that people can picture in their mind's eyes and understand clearly to see how it fits with the ideal image of criteria they're looking for. And they're also looking for that risk. So if you know that there's something, your body language will give it away at interview. If there's a gap you haven't explained and you're uncomfortable about it, the recruiter will go, there's something I need to dig at. And if you disclose it before your CV or application form, they're not going to ask because they don't want to embarrass you either. Recruiters like nothing worse than sitting there making the candidate wince, actually, because it's as uncomfortable for the recruiter as it is for the applicant. So be open and honest, professional, and take away the worries as much as you can beforehand, because then there's not going to be an issue there.
And I know we haven't got much time left, so I'm going to try and just capitalise as best I can. What are the most sought after skills at the moment? So if we are looking at a redundancy, what should we be gaps should we be trying to aim for? Emily, is that one for you?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Here's the statistics. Here's what we're seeing from our data. And so Carolyn, you can do more what you're hearing, but on LinkedIn, we've been able to track this. And so what I said earlier, good news is transferable skills are leading the way. So I'm going to be looking at my list, but it's communications, business management, problem solving, leadership. Those are kind of 4 really, transferable skills that can go across any sector. We're then starting to get a little bit more technical. We would be digging into project management. Digital literacy is a must nowadays. Employee L&D, so learning and development, and then we're getting into data science, data storage technology, and technical support. So those would be kind of the top trending skills right now.
Karen, is that what you're hearing?
It is, and I'd also say that people need to do a little bit of horizon scanning and be aware of how those skills are changing. So I've on the link that's shared in the chat box, there is a reference in that link to the World Economic Forum report. The 2020 report came out in October, just as the pandemic was getting well established. And the pandemic's come along and it's stopped us talking about Industry 4.0 and the automation that was happening. It's fast forwarded that, but we stopped talking about it, but it hasn't gone away. It's got bigger. And so what that report does, it helps you understand that, being human, having your human skills really well honed is really important. Problem solving, understanding tech, self-management, and working in tech in some space, whether that's to do with content management and developing that side of it, or actually being effective as a coder, understanding Python, whatever language is developing, but it's having an eye for what's coming in the future. And it's quite clear. I mean, the report shows that large companies, most companies expect to have a 50% retrain in the next 3 to 4 years. 50% of skills retrained. That is huge, and that pace will not change. So if you're going to be anything in life, be a lifelong learner and be a quick acquirer of skills, see where the future's going, horizon scan, and pivot as you need to. If you can find a theme for your career, you can hook all of that round. And by theme, I'm talking about problem solving, something like working on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal issue, because that's a long-term opportunity. The goals have not been met by 2030. They won't be. Current estimates of 2083. That's a 50-year career for anybody graduating now.
That's a great tip, actually, isn't it?
So go where the big need is, see where that big need is. You can have a career all around that theme, and you can pivot and develop skills, and it will make sense to you, and it will make sense when you're sharing your story with employers.
And speaking about need, just real fast, I know it was posted on the chat, but opportunity.linkedin.com, that is the site. So LinkedIn and Microsoft partnered together, and we have posted 1,000 hours of content that are relevant to the skills that are needed for the most in-demand jobs. So to tie exactly back to Carolyn, these are the jobs that are in most demand right now, and we've unlocked over 1,000 hours of content to help you develop those skills. So more than ever, companies are wanting to help, and governments and organizations are wanting to help people develop the skills to be able to do the jobs, because there is a shortage of skills. And so, it's a great time to learn, because everybody is having to learn, regardless of if you're in a job or out of job. Developing new skills is critical. So upskilling and reskilling is a top priority for most organizations across the globe.
Well, I think we're almost coming to the end. So is there anything either of you, I'll take you each in turn, maybe Carolyn first. Is there anything you would say specifically to somebody right now who is, they're facing that redundancy? What's the kind of message you want to send them home with tonight?
Have faith in yourself. Be absolutely clear about who you are, what talents you want to serve, and find something to serve with those talents so you can make the difference you're here to make.
That's lovely. Emily, what's
I love that. I think you're not in it alone, and make sure to spend the time to think about what you want. Don't be desperate and run into another job. We've seen a perfect example tonight of someone that spent some time thinking about what would I ideally like to do. And now she is so happy and thinks it's a great opportunity. So, don't rush into the next thing. Take some time, pause, and think about yourself and what you would like in your future. And good luck.
Good luck. Yes.
Find a coach to work with to help you. Go and learn on LinkedIn. Do all the stuff that's out there. Get the help.
Well, thank you guys so much for coming on, and thank you, Dawn, as well earlier. You've all been amazing, and I love all the comments on the side there. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and contributing. It's been really a lovely session. So once again, thank you everybody, to our guests and to everyone at home, and good night.